We're just going to make a quick panel here talking about BRICS, trying to help people understand what's going forward here. Now, for you guys, I'm going to start out here with a question for Andy, since we didn't have time to follow up from Andy's last session, trying to make up some time. The first question is going to go to Andy. I know that there's a lot to talk about. Let's try to scope it, though, today in the scope of BRICS. What questions do you have as he's talking about, oh my gosh, how many hands are going to go up? You're going to have to pick this. So I'm going to go down, and you guys give me a question. Andy, you pick them.
Over there. Can't see. It's like, where were you this week?
I picked you yesterday. Someone else.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you, Patrick. Andy. Good. Patrick, you're going to appreciate this question. Andy, I've watched all your videos, so thank you. I understand everything you said today. Well, my question is your final thank you slide said that gold and silver is the only asset without any counterparty risk, and I agree with you. I want to ask the gold guy how gold and silver's lack of counterparty risk will be affected when BlackRock pushes through the ETF for Bitcoin.
I would like Andy to know that I did not have him ask that question on purpose. I tried to get someone else to ask.
Is this on?
Yeah.
So I don't know that it will have any effect on the fact that it has no counterparty risk. I mean, gold and silver are assets unto themselves. I don't think that event will have any impact on gold and silver's lack of or of its counterparty risk. I mean, to me, they're different. It's a different question. I think that anytime you get an organization like BlackRock controlling something and ETFs that kind of change the purity, if you will, and when Bitcoin was able to be traded on a contract, I figured it had changed when you could buy it on the COMEX as a contract. So I'm the wrong guy to ask on crypto. Look, I'm not a crypto basher. I own some Theta because Bix is my friend. I own some XRP because I do a lot of shows with guys on XRP that have convinced me. I own one Bitcoin. I do it because I didn't want to miss out on something after I should have known better. But the bottom line is I don't care what happens with traditional assets. Gold and silver have no counterparty risk, period. Nobody knows, including my wife, including anybody, how much gold and silver. I don't even know how much I have. And the fact that it's not on a balance sheet held by a custodian who can use all sorts of leverage to blur or distort the actual price, it's irrelevant to me. If you want to own something that has no counterparty risk, to me, it's gold or silver or crypto in your own possession, period.
Jeff, I'm going to throw that a little bit to you then, because you guys probably know him a little bit if you've watched any of our stuff. But again, Jeff is one of my good friends, and I respect his opinion a lot. He's the guy I go to when I'm trying to piece things together. So maybe fill in that gap when he's saying he's not the crypto expert. I would consider you one of them. What do you think is going on here?
Well, I actually just read the book that Jack recommended, the David Rogers Webb, The Great Taking, which I really recommend you go read. And the powers that be don't want anyone to have personal property anymore. There's only two forms of personal property that you can have, which is precious metals in self-custody and Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. But that's really the only way for self-sovereignty to protect your own wealth is to own those two assets. So there's great arguments on both sides. Gold and silver have been wealth for 5,000 years, while Bitcoin is only 12, 13 years old. But we live in a digital society where Bitcoin seems to be the future. So there are good arguments on both sides, but you should hedge your bets and have both, so you have the best forms of personal property that are allowed in this space in the world.
This next question I'm going to start off with Jack, but I think all of you guys can answer it because I would assume that your perspectives individually will be a little different, but I'm interested to hear them. It's a good question. So the question is, Andy, you mentioned, yeah, it's coming, right? You guys saw his presentation. We all feel it. something is on the horizon. I suspect you guys all feel it too, right? As we sit here, are we not considering how do we go home and do something different? What are we going to do differently when we walk out of here? We came here, we came to learn. What are we going to do differently? And the question is very simple. What do you think we can do best now to prepare for what is coming, especially in the United States? Thanks, TQ, for that question.
So I'll give you the same advice I gave to a similar question on Friday night, is get local. Shrink your circle, all right? The worst things get globally. Reduce your circle. Worry about yourself first. Worry about the room that you're in. Worry about your own house. Get that in order. You can't help other people if you can't help yourself first. Worry about your family, then worry about your neighbors, then worry about your community, all right? Get local. The worst things get. Focus on self-custody of your own coin, your own gold or silver. Worry about having a little bit of cash on the side if the cards don't work. We all saw the banks going down in March. And there was a question of, will the bank cards be working within a week or so? Now, they managed to kick that can down the road a little bit longer, and they stopped the bleeding. But what they really did was they slapped a tourniquet on the banking system. You still have that gaping hole in the arm. If they take the tourniquet off, it's going to start bleeding out again. So shrink your sphere and worry about your own small situation, not to sound condescending or anything. Don't worry so much about the global problems. Improve your own local situation, your own food security, your own power security. Take care of the local situation first, and don't get lost in the grand scheme of it all. There's a very famous speech by a guy, Admiral William McRaven. He's a former Navy SEAL, became a Navy Admiral, and he gave a commencement speech that went viral, and he eventually wrote a small book based on it called First Make Your Bed. If you want to change the world, you got to make your bed first. Start every day with a small task on a local level to improve your immediate situation. That improves your power and your influence, propels you on to the next task to change the world one little incremental change at a time.
I thought that was about as spot on as you could get. I never understood why my wife never lets me leave without making the bed in the morning. I never quite understood it, but now I get it. It makes sense. One task at a time. I agree, and that's why I said, embrace it. You can only save the world one person at a time, starting with yourself and your immediate family. It's the exact same thing, and he's spot on. Get your house in order. Pay off variable rate debt. Try to get out of debt. Pay yourself first. The lesson I learned 33 years ago. I bought something every 2 weeks. Even if I had debts to pay, I'd buy 1 ounce of silver. I don't care what it is. Pay yourself first, or you never get off the wheel. Like he said, shrink your circle. You can't impact people. Most people will think you're nuts and won't get it until it's too late. So start with yourself, your immediate family, get your house in order, have food, have water. Lots of people died on the Titanic because they thought it couldn't sink. It was impossible. They didn't have enough life rafts. Build your life raft. Hope you never need to use it. Be damn glad you have it. But if you don't take the time, if in your gut you feel something's wrong, then take the time before you try to tell everyone how smart you are and you need to protect yourself. Get your house in order. What he just said was about as eloquent and perfect as it could be, and he's right. That's what I would do.
And what Andy just said was he literally summarized BRIC in one sentence, right? That was the whole concept of BRIC, was you build a moat.
Yeah.
That silver and gold is that moat.
Yeah.
Jeff, what about you?
Well, I agree with these gentlemen. I agree with Jack's sentiment, and Andy added perfectly there. But what we do, economic preppers, and the reason we wrote our book and kind of a tutorial just to break it down, is we're at the Silver Symposium, so obviously we're focused on the economics and the money and the wealth system, but being prepared so you're not scared, like Travis likes to say, is about, it's also community, which is why you're here. There are a lot of people in here, and I remember being at events like this when I first started out. You think you're alone in the world because a lot of people around you don't think the way you do, but most people in this room are like-minded. So now you have a community. This is one of the foundations of a community. So please introduce yourself. Find 10 people that just exchange numbers. Build a community, because preparing can be overwhelming. So grab one of our books and just get an idea of an outline of things you can do. But one of the chapters we focus on is community. Build that so you don't have to do everything yourself. If you realize someone has the food, someone that knows how to garden, someone knows weaponry, someone knows about silver, diversify and grow, because the sum of the team is much better than the individual.
I thought that was a great answer. And I would also like to say, if some of those things that he listed, and of course, if you guys haven't watched Shielded Prepper, listen to him too. He talks through really just great strategic ways to prepare for the basic essentials. So if you haven't taken the time to slow down and look at your own home, to look at what you're doing for your family and see what you have built up around you, take a second, take a step back, inventory, right? This is one thing you guys can all go home and do. If you haven't done it yet, go home and take an inventory of what you have. Can you get through without water? If you have, how many of you guys have heard of Economic Ninja? Raise your hand. Oh, okay. So doesn't he talk about a water treatment solution? Pretty simple, right? These are tools we're bringing you guys. If you don't know what I'm talking about, he's got them like in a link somewhere. Just look it up. Water, food, shelter, and again, your network. This is really critical. You can't do it alone. You just can't. It doesn't work. You could think you can, but all it takes is like a team like me with my community who want what you have, and it's done, because we'll take it. And you need to make sure that you can defend for yourself against the people who want to come and take from you. I really have to bring this full circle by asking you, this is a BRICS panel. Last year at the symposium, you had a great talk on China, Jack. It really opened my eyes. The way that the population crisis was there, the lack of women in the community so that men can't get married. You called the housing issue last year with China, and I've been watching it ever since. I would like to hear an update from you as to what's going on in China, as an update from last year's symposium. And then after that, I'm sure that these two guys are gonna give us some real good context to fill it in, because I know that you guys are the people I would like to hear him responding to you, and this is the conversation I wanna have. So, Jack, the question goes to you. China, help me understand, give us an update from a year ago.
All right, if you wanted to get back on schedule, asking me about China
I know,
is
okay,
not the way to do
but
it.
I'm here, I'm on stage.
All right, so China, real quick summary. China has a population collapse that's ongoing, and China has fueled their expansion by building entire cities and infrastructure that nobody needs or wants. There are entire cities of buildings that are empty, unfinished apartments. They all have owners. Nobody lives in them. Nobody's ever going to live in them. Yeah, very poorly built, absolutely. They call them tofu dregs is the nickname for them. So the problem is a massive debt-fueled expansion. It's the GFC here in the States, but it is on such a much more monumental scale. And there's no way out of this for China, all right? They can't just print their way out of it because China does not have the world reserve currency. Right? We got out of the GFC by stealing wealth from everybody else in the world, including everybody in this room. Right? We got out of the GFC because we printed dollars. When you print a dollar, you steal spending power from existing dollars. Most existing dollars are outside of the United States. Everybody in the world has to hold them in order to pay for food and oil because it's the world reserve currency. So we were able to print our way out of the GFC at everybody else's expense. China's problem is even bigger than we had in the GFC, and they don't have the out that we had, because if they print their yuan, they're just going to devalue the yuan. There are not US holders of yuan that they can steal the value from. So China needs a BRICS currency. They need a new currency so they can steal it, so they can steal from everybody who holds it. So they're not saying that as they push for their new BRICS currency. They're not telling you we want to replace the dollar as a global reserve currency so we can steal from you. They want to do exactly what we do to the rest of the world. I'm not sitting here in judgment of that because the US does it. Our government are not innocent in this. But that's the main drive from my point of view of what they're trying to do with the BRICS currency. Now, we started to see bank failures in China last fall, shortly after I gave that presentation at the Silver Symposium last year in Spokane. Banks started failing. And actually, my channel got in trouble because I covered some of the protests that were going on. People in China were holding up blank pieces of paper. I didn't plan this, it's just working this way. They're protesting, they hold up blank pieces of paper, right? Because they're not allowed to protest the government in China. That's how they protest. It's like putting the tape over your mouth. You see protesters do that here sometimes. They were just standing at the bank holding up the empty pieces of paper. All they wanted was their money back, all right? Because the bank stole their money and it failed. And plainclothes police officers, all of a sudden this army of military-age males in white t-shirts and black gym shorts comes out of nowhere and just starts beating everybody up and dragging them away. And it was videoed. And I showed some of that video on my channel, and I got in trouble with YouTube for violating their community guidelines on displays of violence. All right, I was pointing out someone else's violence. I wasn't advocating it or glorifying it. I was, I'm not a journalist or trained in journalism, but that seemed like a journalisty thing to do, like to point out, hey, this awful thing is happening in this other country. And I got in trouble for it. So, and my channel didn't grow for about 3 months after that. When they slap you on the wrist, they hit you. So the banks started to fail, and the response to that is all of a sudden anybody that had accounts at the banks that were struggling, their COVID code went red. China had this little app, the COVID app, where to get on public transport, to access any of the services, basically their social credit score system, if you had come into contact with somebody who had COVID, it would turn red and you couldn't get on a bus, you couldn't fly, you couldn't travel. Anybody who had accounts at these banks that were struggling in China, all of a sudden, miraculously, all their COVID apps went red, so they couldn't leave, they couldn't get to the next protest. That's how they exerted that control. That's how they stifled the protest.
But that can never happen here, right?
Oh no, they'd never do that here. Right?
Yeah.
So now here we are.
The questions I'm asking myself, right? I don't know either.
I think that's on.
Yeah, I told you wound me up. I'll just go real quick. Evergrande has filed for bankruptcy. They're dead. All right, it's just a matter of time. If they are forced into liquidation instead of restructuring, that's going to be a big deal. Restructuring is where they say, okay, if you hold our debt, you're only going to get 20 cents on the dollar back instead of 80. At least that way, all the banks don't immediately write everything down and all the buildings don't go up for sale right away. If they go into liquidation, which means they can't restructure their debt, all those buildings, all that equipment, all those bonds, all go up for sale at the same time, the prices crash. All right, so that could happen within a month right now. They tried to restructure and they abandoned the plan at the last minute. And now Country Garden, the largest developer in China, they're even bigger than Evergrande, they have started to not quite default on their bonds, but they're missing payments and they're starting that 30-day grace period. That's exactly what happened to Evergrande in 2021. So they're in the first innings with Country Garden of happening exactly what happened to Evergrande. So it's still going on. It's taking longer than I would have thought it would take, but it's definitely not over and it's still getting worse. Now I'm done, sorry, you can have it.
Do you guys see why I like? How many of you guys have never heard that before? Like you had no idea this was going on with China. So please like, share, and subscribe to his channel, Nobody Special Finance. You should have known about this. So you guys see why I'm bringing these people here, right? Andy, please, BRICS, what do you think you heard what he said. Add some color to it for us.
I mean, the whole global system, the whole global debt-based system, it's a Ponzi scheme, and that's why you see Zoltan Pozsar say this new system we are embarking on is Bretton Woods 3, a system based upon commodities and transparency. There's an old saying that he who has the gold makes the rules. And maybe China inherently understands this. This is why they have gone through most of Africa and most of South America. They have forged deals that are allowing countries to bring their commodities to the market. And obviously China has a very strong vested interest in this, in oil, in gold, in rare earths, and all of the things that you will need when the system resets. And I think maybe the system resetting isn't just a North American thing, just a dollar thing. Maybe it's the whole system. But if the whole system blows up, because if the Chinese system blows up, it'll drag us down too. And so the whole point of it is that if the whole system blows up and a new system arises, well, it's not going to be based off of debt instruments and promises. It's going to be based off of assets. And I think that's exactly the one difference between China and the United States, is that they hold way more in the way of assets. Yeah, they may have a worse situation than we do on this debt-based, credit-based expansion, but in the end, not only do they hold more of the assets that you need, they hold, almost 90% of the global copper inventories, 70% of the global aluminum inventories. They own most of the wheat and the corn, and they're striking deals with all of these countries. We'll come in, we will build your infrastructure, and for it we want to be paid in this. They just struck a deal with Iran to modernize their biggest airport. You know how they're being paid? In oil. So yes, the whole system sucks and needs to be reset. But after the reset, he who has the gold makes the rules, and it goes much more deeper than just gold. How about the rare earths that are almost all throughout the Eurasian continent? And, we haven't thought that out real well, trying to build batteries and a green system. So, yeah, I agree with everything he's saying, but in the end, who's got all of the commodities and who has all the debt instruments? And I think that's what will allow countries like China probably to grow from the ashes faster than the West will.
So I love watching these guys in my office. Seriously, I sit in my office, I play their YouTubes every day. If I see Andy on, I thumbs up, I like, I share, I subscribe. Jack, same thing for you. And then I look at Jeff and I go, hey, what do you think about what they just said? Because I'm always like, yeah, I know what I think. I'm going to think whatever he probably thinks. So the reality is, I want to hear, what do you think on stage live? I get to ask you, what do you think about what they just said?
Yeah, no pressure. But there's a lot of things to put together. Like, I think, how I like history, so I study history, and I think China's first approach was another New Deal. Back in the 30s, the U.S. came out of the Great Depression through FDR's infrastructure programs and all the great works, the Tennessee Valley Authority, building the infrastructure all the way through Eisenhower's interstate program. But China tried that and it didn't work out. So now they have other approaches. They're trying many different areas to attack. As you know, as a former miner, they are the #1 manufacturer and producer of Bitcoin through mining. So they're looking to corner the market as best they can on Bitcoin, but they're also partnering with all these other nations, as Andy pointed out, in the BRICS Plus. The BRICS is not a formal organization, but they have like one of the meetings they just had, the meeting they just had in August, they didn't announce how to join, but they announced new partners, and they focused on energy. Economies run on energy. They added Iran, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Egypt because they wanted to get the oil. The world still runs on oil and petroleum. It may not be the petrodollar, but now they've got the markets cornered so much on oil. And as Ray Dalio has pointed out in Changing World Order, that's one of the ways to develop a new currency. They haven't announced new currency, but they're laying the foundation to be there by cornering the market on commodities. And now they also have trade routes, which you also pointed out, with Egypt and the canals, and also the brick and road. So they've got all these different areas. Plus, they're also attacking the dollar because they're talking with South Korea and they're talking to Japan, who's a big owner of our bonds, and they are 1/7 of the Dixie. So if they start to move towards China, and China starts to corner the market and attacking all those countries and devaluing the dollar and eroding the U.S. economy in all these different areas, it's not a question of if, but when.
Couldn't agree more.
You guys see that? That's why I like having him in my office. One of the last things I'm going to do, because I really like doing this, is it's always about you guys, right? So the question comes to me, I'm going to ask anyone out there who is a naysayer, anyone out there who really doesn't agree and has maybe a different perspective and may want to share that. Is there anyone out? There you go. Yeah, I love that. Your arms are a lot bigger as I get closer. I don't really want to argue with you.
I'm curious, how can the BRICS survive long term if they're attacking the dollar and China's demographics are not so great, same with Russia, and they don't have anybody to patrol the seas to get the goods that they need?
Thank you.
I'll take this one first, and I know that they both have something to say about this, but they just developed the BRICS Naval Alliance, and these countries will be together to patrol the Indian Ocean. They just built the North-South Corridor, I believe it's called, which is a route from Iran to Russia or to India. They are specifically, I talked about the Belt Road. The Belt Road is not going to be, all these railways and bridges and roads and maritime channels will not be for people to drive on. It will be patrolled by military only and by commerce. And what is the rallying cry is what I talked about in my presentation. The the coercion and the hypocrisy and the hegemony. That's the rallying cry. But the glue that makes it work, in my opinion, is what the finance minister from Russia told us 2 years ago. Everyone is upset that we didn't see a common currency coming out of the BRICS meeting. They did agree, as he said, to settle energy in their local currencies, and they tasked the finance ministers with go back to the drawing board, come back to the meeting next year in Russia with an idea on a common settlement currency. That common settlement currency, in my opinion, will be pegged to the only other tier 1 asset in the world, gold. They will peg it to gold, and they will use distributed ledger technology, blockchain, in order to show the veracity and the immutability of it. You do not need to make it redeemable, because President de Gaulle proved that redeemable currencies or convertible currencies convert. But if you have it properly shown on a distributed ledger and have it audited, you now have veracity that the currency is real. And so I think that they are building alliances militarily. I mean, you got 2 of the 3 largest nuclear arsenals on the planet in the BRICS. So yes, the U.S. Navy does patrol those routes, but you now have the BRICS Naval Alliance, you have the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is the largest regional military group in the world. And in order to do this the right way, you have to have a growing alliance of countries to have that mass. 25 or 7 countries have formally applied, 22 more have expressed interest. You could see 50 countries in a year or 2 who are in the BRICS, including Japan, including Australia, including these countries. Mexico, how about France? Struck a 50-point deal with China ranging from 5G to military engagement, and asked to be invited to the BRICS meeting. Sides are being chosen, paid for a large natural gas deal with the United Arab Emirates in yuan. So sides are being chosen. So it's not all on China. One other point I'd like to make is that they're setting it up that way specifically. The presidency in the BRICS rotates. It was in South Africa last year. It goes to Russia next year. So there isn't just one voice. So how do you make everyone have the same say at the table? Pony up. Pledge what you need to pledge to the distributed ledger to give you that equal footing at the table, because they see that the one voice doesn't work. You have to do this mutually exclusive, or you have to combine and do it together, and everyone have an equal voice at the table. And I think that's why this is unfolding methodically. Yes, it's going faster now that the dollar's been weaponized and whatever, but the changes over the last couple of years are extraordinary, including military, including commodities, including the talk of a common settlement currency. And I had the fortune of having a couple drinks with James Rickards a few weeks ago, and I asked him, I said, James, what do you think about this? He was employed by the CIA to run simulated financial war games. And he says, well, here's what I would do if it were me. And he says, this is what I think they will do. Every new brick, as they call it will be pegged to 1 ounce of gold in dollar terms, period. He says, if they do that, they don't have to do anything. The West will destroy themselves. I'm like, what do you mean, Jim? And I need another drink for this. And he says, well, if the West continues to inflate in order to pay for all of their entitlement programs and all of their obligations, remember, we're 150 trillion in debt, and no one's buying our bonds anymore. Saudi's selling them, Japan's selling them, China's selling them. So if we have to inflate, the dollar goes down, gold goes up, BRICS win. He says, and if the West tries to buy gold to compete, the dollar goes down, gold goes up, BRICS win. So little by little by little by little by little by little, then bang, all at once, they got their military in place, they got all the commodities, it's a growing union. So it doesn't all rely upon China. It may have started with China, but the countries that are joining because they all want to have equal say instead of be under the thumb of the West. So, and I think that it would be one of these things where no one's going to realize how real this is until they announce, here we are a united group. And when that happens and it's backed by something like gold, I think it takes on a whole new amount or a whole new level of legitimacy.
I'll go in a different direction. I know we've talked a lot about China, but I think that part of the I in BRICS is India. And we just had a G20 meeting there, and Prime Minister Modi he's working both sides of the coin. He's working with the West and the East. So they're talking about cryptocurrency rules, but that is a growing and emerging market. You got like the third world will lead the way because they need a new currency. Their economies have crumbled. We see what happened with Greece and Cyprus and Argentina. So there's another example of community, that these countries that have a need for a new currency because they're seeing how degraded their economies are, they need a new system. And that's why I think that BRICS is not necessarily going to grow, but has to grow.
Jack. Am I on? I had a whole, I don't think I'm on.
Yes, you're on now.
Did I violate the YouTube guidelines again? I had a whole page of notes prepared for India, but Jeff just blew that up, so much for that idea. But I agree, India is the key to the success of the BRICS alliance. When I was in my early 20s, I knew everything, much like I do now. Me and my old man, too much alike to get along at the time. We get along great now. But, we had one of those infamous, I'm a grown man, I can handle it, I'm out of here conversations. I went out on my own. And then I realized real quick, man, this is hard. Going out on your own sucks. I made it, but getting off the dollar is kind of the same way. All right, when there's trouble, everybody runs to the dollar right now. We had inflation here in the States last year. Everybody else had it worse when we caused the inflation because everybody else needs dollars. So if the dollar's inflating, everybody needs dollars. They have to inflate their own currency even more to buy the inflated dollars that they need. So everybody talks a big game about getting off the dollar, and if I was in their position, I would want to do the same thing. It's easier said than done. And there was a headline back in July. This is a note that Jeff didn't ruin for me. The new development bank is China's BRICS bank. All right. The new development bank was founded for the purpose of developing BRICS countries to further the de-dollarization agenda. It's financing a lot of the Belt and Road projects. They had a lot of dollar-denominated debt. And the new development bank is 20% owned by the Russians. So when the sanctions hit after the invasion, no Western banks would do any business with the new development bank anymore. Well, when you owe dollars and when the Western banks cut you off, you've got a big problem because you've got to pay those dollars back. So this summer, they issued some new bonds to pay off their old dollar bonds. They issued some new dollar-denominated bonds, and the interest rate on those new bonds was 5 times the interest rate on the debt that they were paying off with them. This bank is going to be insolvent soon because they need dollars. The bank that was created for the purpose of de-dollarizing is dying because it needs dollars. It's easier said than done. So I don't doubt their goal of getting off the dollar, and I don't doubt their reason for it. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to happen overnight. I think they're using the prospect of a BRICS currency to scare people out of the dollar, to try to speed up the demise of the dollar as more of a PR campaign. And there was articles going around in the summer, in July again. You guys remember the tweets? It's official. Russian government confirms gold-backed currency is coming. Remember all those tweets? Oh my God, by August, we're going to have the BRICS gold-backed currency? It's October. What happened? You know where that came from? I did a video about this. It was in Russia Today announced it, and then Western media picked it up. Wall Street Journal, all these media outlets, they're all reporting about the gold-backed currency is coming in August. It all traced back to the Russian embassy in Kenya. Now, when we make changes to monetary policy in the United States, does the American embassy in Kenya announce that change, or does Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve announce that change? It's not from some random embassy in some random country. The Russian embassy in Kenya tweeted out that it's official, a new gold-backed currency is coming in August. And it was reported in foreignpolicy.com was a website. And the Russian embassy in Kenya they tweet to this foreignpolicy.com article, and they say, it's official, here comes our gold-backed currency. And then Russia Today reported on that tweet. And then Western media reported on Russia Today reporting on that tweet. It was circular reporting. Everybody was referring to a tweet from an embassy. And if you clicked on the link in that tweet from the embassy, I got this quote here. There was a quote in this article: the Kremlin's habitual use of lies as an instrument of statecraft offers grounds for skepticism of anything the Russians say. The Russian embassy in Kenya tweets an article that says everything the Russians say is BS, and they say, here comes our gold-backed currency, and everybody quotes it and says, oh man, that's it, it's over. It's easier said than done, and it's a PR campaign. I think a lot of the BRICS, I don't doubt the goal, but all this narrative of it's right around the corner and it's coming and it's going to be next week, no way. The dollar is accepted everywhere. Look at the Russian energy trade, right? The Indians have been the biggest beneficiary of the sanctions on the Russians because the Indians are buying cheap oil from Russia, who can't sell it anywhere else. And now Russia's sitting there saying, what the hell do I do with all these rupees? Nobody, I don't need rupees. Hey, you need to pay in, what is it, rubles. You need to pay in rubles. And the Indians are saying, I'm not paying in rubles. Screw you, I'm not buying rubles to buy oil. Take my rupees. I don't want your rupees. The dollar solves that problem right now, the petrodollar. That's where the petrodollar came from. Because you end up with these big account differences, and what the heck do I do with all these rupees? If I dump them in the Forex market, the rupee's gonna crash. I'm setting my own money on fire. It's easier said than done. This is not a problem that's just gonna happen like that.
Isn't it hilarious when he says rupees for some reason? I don't know why. I think it. You guys see it too, right? Like, I'm not the only one laughing. Okay, guys, I'm gonna close it up here. I'm gonna take. Raise your hand if you have a question. Go ahead. That's all we have? Who's got a question? Okay, that's what I thought. I'm not gonna actually take any questions. The reality is I'm gonna ask you guys to get on his channel and ask, like, share, subscribe, comment, because that's what his channel is there for. If you have questions and you wanted to ask more of Jack, get on Nobody Special Finance. I know he responds to every comment personally. Same with Jeff at Economic Preppers. Andy, I don't think you get to talk to him ever. Like, I don't even know how to get a hold of Andy. I talk to his wife. That's the best way to get a hold of Andy. But no, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you, and we're gonna have you guys. Thank you so much.